I'm back for part two, the Göktürks. So there was in the early Middle Ages, from the 6th to the 8th century, a massive empire in Eurasia. It was called the Göktürk Khanate. It was the First Turkic Empire. Later, it was dislocated into the Eastern and the Western Khanate. And Khan means leader, so sometimes the territory they control for a Khan is a Khanate, but the leader of the leaders, the Khan of Khans, is called Khagan, and it's also a word of Mongol origin. So a Khagan leads a Khaganate, Khaganate. And there was um, these eastern and western Khaganates all together. That first Turkic empire that united or controlled many Turkic nations, meaning they spoke languages related to modern day Turkic. They might look European, they might look Asiatic, Asian, like little, a little more like the Chinese or the Mongols. And this, uh, um, if you count the Eastern and the Western Khaganate, it covered a surface of 7 million square kilometers. It was huge, from Mongolia to the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. The Eastern Khaganate of the Göktürks was attacked and conquered and then dominated by the Chinese dynasty of the Tang, the famous Tang dynasty. I remember watching um, the opening of the uh, of the Olympic Games in Beijing on television. Of course, I wasn't there in 2008, and I remember when the players with the actors arrived on the field and they represented the Tang dynasty. They were drumming and they wore long yellow golden robes, and it was beautiful. And of course, there's a lot to say about the Tang dynasty because it was a golden age in the history of China, and they are still an inspiration today. And in my previous video, I mentioned Snowy Night, Timeless Love, this modern Chinese TV series with Zhang Shunxi and Li Qin, and it takes place under the Tang dynasty, but they can't do the tongue makeup because it would last 4 hours of makeup of work for each actor. So they kept the makeup simple but beautiful. And so the Tang dynasty, um, whose capital city was Xi'an, written with an X in the west. Xi'an, the peace of the west, is in the west of China. And look at it on a map. It's the beginning of the end of the Silk Road. And I wanted to mention something very interesting. So Islam arrived in Central Asia and China through trade, commerce, via the Silk Road. And today there is in China, in Xi'an, the longest, the oldest mosque, the longest serving mosque, the oldest mosque still in activity, still being used as a mosque. It's a mosque in Xi'an, ancient imperial capital city of China for more than 2000 years. And this mosque, it was built with wood. The minaret is on the ground floor. It's made of wood. It looks like a Chinese pagoda. It was built in the year 742. And today you have Muslim Chinese called the Hui, who live in Xi'an, and I'd like to travel to Xi'an, and um, I've discovered China very late, but it's never too late. And to come back to those famous Göktürks, it was the first time during their empire that the word Turk was used. And from what I know, in modern Kazakhstan, the word Tore designates the aristocracy, the descendants of Genghis Khan. And Tore, Tore means righteous. So the Göktürks, their empire was huge. They left inscriptions called on a stone, on a standing stone called a stelae in Latin, in the Orkhon Valley of Mongolia. And this is one of the few Turkic script writing that is left today in the Orkhon Valley. So Gök, blue, like the blue sky of Altai. And that doesn't mean they were all Asian looking with they all had slanted eyes and they looked more or less like the Chinese and the Mongols. There might have been European looking people, huge empire. It's not known enough in Europe, but this Göktürk, there was a first Turkic Khaganate and the second one because there was a restoration, and this takes place long before the arrival of Genghis Khan on the scene, long before the Mongol Empire existed. But we find in Asia, in Western, Central, and Asia, the descendants of these people. The countries today are named Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and I will go on later about this. So look, I will put links in the description. Subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to like and comment, and especially if you have um, specific knowledge of or ideas about this Göktürk Khanate, you can write it in the comments. Speak to you later. See you later for the third part.